gracious, most merciful. All praise is due to God, Lord of the universe, and may His peace and blessings be upon all of His prophets and messengers, including His final and beloved messenger, the seal of the prophets, Muhammad, and His purified household and righteous companions. Dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Various religious traditions often emphasize the role of ritual practices in the formation and function of human life on both the individual and communal levels. On the individual level, religious rituals help to form one's personal and spiritual relationship with God. On the communal level, rituals aid in promoting a sense of social solidarity and strength between members of a religious community. In this episode of the Makers of the Shi'i World, we will embark on an exploration of the significant role of pilgrimage or ziyarah in the formation of Imami Shi'i thought and practice. Specifically, we will focus on a discussion of the place of pilgrimage to the shrine of the third Imam, al-Husayn ibn Ali, and the way it impacts Imami identity and the way it impacts Imami Shi'i thought and practice. We will look at how pilgrimage to Imam Hussein impacts the religious positioning of Imamis. We will do this by examining the efforts of a major Imami traditionist, Al-Shaykh Ja'far ibn Muhammad ibn Qulawayh al-Qummi, known simply as Ibn Qulawayh. Ibn Qulawayh is one of the most reputable Shi'i scholars of the 4th Islamic century, or the 10th century CE. Many biographers and notable scholars have lauded him with various celebratory epithets and commendations. While little information is available about his life, Ibn Qulawayh was probably born in Qom around the beginning of the 4th Islamic century and seems to have commenced his religious education there before moving to Baghdad to teach there until the remainder of his life. He is also said to have traveled as far as Egypt in search of hadith reports. Several prominent scholars are listed as his teachers, including the famous traditionists al-Shaykh al-Kulayni and al-Shaykh al-Saduq. Al-Shaykh al-Mufid, the renowned theologian and jurist, would be counted among his major disciples in Baghdad. Ibn Qulawayh died in either the year 368 or 369 after Hijrah, or 978 or 979 of the Common Era, and was buried in the vicinity of the 7th and 9th Imams Musa al-Kadhim and Muhammad al-Jawad in al-Kadhimiyya, a suburb of Baghdad. Ibn Qulawayh seems to have been a prolific author. Despite most of his works being lost, his most famous work, Kamil al-Ziyarat, is extant and considered one of the earliest Imami sources that is entirely devoted to hadith reports on the merits of pilgrimage to the shrines and burial sites of Prophet Muhammad, his household, the Ahlul Bayt, the Imams, and other notable figures. This work has also been translated to English. In his introduction, Ibn Qulawayh states that he produced this work to make clear to its readers the significance of and virtue in performing the pilgrimage to various burial sites, with a special focus on pilgrimage to the burial site of Imam Hussein ibn Ali. As it is well known, Imam Hussein was tragically massacred along with most of his male family members and companions in Karbala on the day of Ashura, the 10th of Muharram, in the year 61 after Hijrah, or 680 CE, by an Umayyad army during the reign of Yazid ibn Muawiyah. According to various reports, pilgrimage to the burial sites of Imam Hussein and the Karbala martyrs commenced immediately following their deaths and would continue into the contemporary period. Today, millions of devout Shi'is and others perform the pilgrimage to Karbala and other holy sites throughout the year. To further appreciate Ibn Qulawayh's scholarly activity and especially his production of Kamil al-Ziyarat, we may recall from previous episodes the broader historical circumstances in which Ibn Qulawayh and his contemporaries lived, that is, during a period of intellectual and communal flourishment under Buwayhid rule of Iraq and Iran. This period came shortly after the Shi'is had experienced continued repression under the ruling regimes, and more recently, an era of uncertainty with the death of the 11th Imam al-Hasan al-Askari in the year 260 after Hijrah, or 874 CE, and a crisis pertaining to his succession. It was in this climate that Imami scholars attempted to maintain the integrity of the community and strengthen the bonds of the believers with their Imams. One way they did this was to focus on doctrine, that is to say, on the occultation or ghaibah of the 12th Imam, and the insistence on the constant necessity of the divine proof or guide, hujjah, on earth at all times. This is partially evident when we examine the specific salutations that the faithful are encouraged to recite when visiting the burial sites of the Imams, especially Imam Hussein. Shi'is refer to the Imams as the heirs, the warith, of the ancient prophets and of one another, a point to which we will return to shortly. Another way was to focus on practice. It is important to note that with the coming of the Buwayhids to power, especially in Iraq, the public observance of distinctly Shi'i rituals and practices, such as the commemoration of the martyrdom of Imam Hussein and the celebration of the Day of Ghadir, were encouraged for the first time after extended periods of repression under the Abbasids and before them the Umayyads. It is in this context that we can appreciate the instrumental role of traditionists such as Ibn Qulawayh and his book Kamil al-Ziyarat. Kamil al-Ziyarat is composed of 108 chapters consisting of over 800 hadith reports narrated on the authority of the Prophet Muhammad and the Imams. The majority of the reports, about 70%, focus on the status of Karbala and pilgrimage to the tomb of its martyr Imam Hussein. While a complete analysis of this work is not feasible in the time that we have, I would like to give you a few examples of some of the reports narrated in this source in our exploration of Imami Shi'i identity formation and religious positioning, especially as it relates to the role of Imam Hussein. This positioning of Imami Shi'ism can be conceptualized on three levels. First, reports urging veneration of Imam Hussein and pilgrimage to his tomb promote individual and communal Shi'i piety and identity. Second, these reports provoke Shi'is to maintain a distinct religious, social, and political identity vis-a-vis the larger scope of non-Shi'i Muslims. Finally, reports connect Hussein and Karbala to notable figures from previous religious traditions, such as Judaism and Christianity, enabling Shi'is to establish a continual link between the past and future and complete their understanding of the divine message as one that is united with Imam Hussein at its forefront. Let us explain this idea further. First, several hadith reports in Kamil al-Ziyarat emphasize the importance and merits of performing pilgrimage to the shrine of Imam Hussein. Among the numerous benefits, reports state that Prophet Muhammad, Imam Ali, Fatima al-Zahra, all of the Imams and the angels all supplicate to God on behalf of the pilgrims of the shrine of Imam Hussein and seek forgiveness on their behalf. Other reports guarantee the intercession of the Prophet and the Imams for the devout pilgrims of Imam Hussein, in addition to their entrance to paradise in the hereafter. Furthermore, reports suggest that the greater the difficulty and risk in performing the pilgrimage, the greater the promised rewards and merits. There is no doubt that such traditions greatly encourage individual pilgrims and promote their personal spiritual development and their relationship with God and the Imams. The second level of positioning pertains to specifically Imami Shi'i identity as it relates to and is distinct from the broader non-Shi'i Muslim tradition. Here, the story of Karbala begins long before the desert plain was the actual site of the massacre and burial of Imam Hussein and the martyrs in the first Islamic century or the 7th century CE. Reports note that the land of Karbala was created 24,000 years before the site of the Kaaba in Mecca. While pilgrimage to Karbala was encouraged at all times throughout the year, special occasions warranted greater focus and merit. To that end, reports state that the pilgrims to Karbala are given preference over the pilgrims to Mecca, such that God considers their visitation of Imam Hussein and their acts of worship on the day of Arafah, the 9th day of the month of Dhul Hijjah, before God considers the pilgrims observing the Hajj on that day. Additionally, reports emphasize the horrendous nature of the killing of Imam Hussein and his companions and the vehement condemnation of their killers. The angels and ancient prophets are also reported to have condemned the killers even before the tragedy of Karbala took place. Here, clear boundaries are drawn, revealing the special position of Imam Hussein within Islam and, by extension, his devout followers, and of course the place of his opponents and their followers. The third level of positioning pertains to Imami identity vis-a-vis the non-Muslim Abrahamic traditions. Imami Shi'ism would directly include the Judeo-Christian traditions in the formulation of its worldview, while placing Imam Hussein front and center. Reports hold that many of the ancient prophets, even before Prophet Muhammad himself, were familiar with Imam Hussein's future martyrdom and participated in the sorrowful events surrounding it. They also relate how the souls of all of the prophets and messengers residing in the heavens, as well as the angels, plead to God to permit them to descend to Karbala and to visit Imam Hussein. In one suspenseful and exciting tradition, a companion of one of the Imams relates that in one of his journeys to visit Karbala from Kufa sometime in the earlier part of the 2nd Islamic century or the 8th century CE, that is during the reign of the Umayyads, he waited until the middle of the night before proceeding to Imam Hussein's tomb for fear of being caught and persecuted by the agents of the Umayyad Caliph. When he proceeded toward the tomb, he was stopped by a figure and told to go back, for he would not be able to access the tomb. He left and returned closer to dawn. The same figure once again stopped him. The pilgrim asked the guard why he would not be able to visit the tomb, requesting permission to visit, and quickly returned to Kufa before being caught by the Umayyad Caliph's agents. The figure replied, "Wait a few moments, for Moses had requested permission from the Lord to visit, and he was granted permission and was accompanied by 70,000 angels. They have been here since the beginning of the night and will ascend once again at the end of the night." The man then asked, "And who are you?" The figure replied, "I am one of the angels who has been commissioned to protect the grave of Hussein and to seek forgiveness for his visitors." The man then related that he was utterly shocked when he witnessed and heard this. Finally, he was able to access Imam Hussein's tomb and return safely back to Kufa. In another report, the 6th Imam, Ja'far al-Sadiq, encourages his followers to continuously visit Karbala for, quote, "It hosts the best of the Prophet's sons. Indeed, the angels continued to visit Karbala for 1,000 years before my grandfather Hussein resided in it, and the angels Gabriel and Michael, Jibra'il and Mikael continue to visit him every single night." As noted earlier, special occasions throughout the year warranted greater focus and merit. The middle of Sha'ban, the 8th month of the Islamic calendar, is a significant time for Shi'is, as it marks the birth of the 12th Imam, Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Mahdi, in the year 255 after Hijrah, or 869 of the Common Era. To that end, reports emphasize the significance of performing pilgrimage to Karbala on the day of the 12th Imam's birth. One report holds that if anyone wishes to meet and greet the souls of all 124,000 prophets and messengers, beginning with Adam and ending with Muhammad, that one should observe pilgrimage to Karbala on this occasion, for they all seek permission from God to descend from the heavens and visit Karbala on that day. Through these and other reports, Imam Hussein is thus conceived of as the connection point between past and future. On the one hand, he is considered the heir of the previous prophets, and they all look forward to him. This is evident in the ritual salutations that are recommended to recite when visiting Imam Hussein's tomb, that are referred to as the salutations of the heir, or ziyarat warith. The 6th Imam teaches one of his disciples how to salute Imam Hussein with the following greeting: "Peace be upon you, O heir of Adam, God's chosen one. Peace be upon you, O heir of Noah, God's prophet. Peace be upon you, O heir of Abraham, God's friend. Peace be upon you, O heir of Moses, God's interlocutor. Peace be upon you, O heir of Jesus, God's spirit. Peace be upon you, O heir of Muhammad, God's beloved. Peace be upon you, O heir of Ali, legatee of God's messenger. Peace be upon you, O heir of Fatima, daughter of God's messenger. Peace be upon you, O proof of God in His heavens and earth. On the other hand, the final Imam comes from Imam Hussein's progeny and is his heir and avenger. As noted earlier, part of the doctrine of the Imamah and the occultation of the final Imam entailed an insistence on the constant necessity of a divine guide to serve as God's proof or hujjah on earth at all times. According to Imami belief, the final and hidden Imam's major role would be to function as the guardian of the divine message and to reappear before the end of times to usher in a period of peace and justice along with Prophet Jesus. Jesus would thus follow the lead of the 12th Imam. Some reports note that part of the 12th Imam's role, however, would entail avenging Imam Hussein's unjust murder. Several figures, including Imam Hussein, his family members and companions, as well as his killers, would be resurrected during the reign of the 12th Imam. The Imam would then pronounce his judgment. Those who stood on the wrong side of history would meet their doom, while those who stood on the right side, including Imam Hussein's supporters and devotees, as well as implicitly the genuine followers of the ancient prophets, would inherit and partake in the kingdom of peace and justice. Thus, from the example of Ibn Qulawayh and his scholarship, we have seen how devotion to and commemoration of Imam Hussein is arguably the most important aspect of Imami Shi'i doctrinal worldview. We have also recounted some of the reports narrated on the authority of the Prophet Muhammad and the Imams on the place of Karbala and the significance of pilgrimage to the tomb of its martyr. For a religious community that has remained a minority throughout its entire history, often beleaguered and oppressed, we can see how reports emphasizing the place of Imam Hussein can be conceived of in the minds of Shi'i believers to reinforce a sense of strength and hope. Despite the harsh realities of their times, the doctrinal confusions, and the political repression, devout Shi'is are placed in the most favorable of religious positioning. This positioning occurs on three levels. The first level relates to individual Shi'i piety and collective community. The second level relates to Shi'i identity vis-a-vis the non-Shi'i Muslim tradition. And finally, the third level relates to Shi'i identity vis-a-vis the non-Muslim Abrahamic tradition. Taken altogether, Imam Hussein may be conceived of as the anchor and focus of all past, present, and future Shi'i commitments. Please join us again next time for more on the makers of the Shi'i world. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.